Hello, welcome to the Miko Bits Show. This is where we keep up with what's new in Bitcoin, DeFi, and blockchain. And today we have an exciting guest, Brian Kerr from Kava, a co-founder of this cross-chain protocol. It's pretty essential type stuff to understand if you're in the DeFi space. So really looking forward to getting the skinny on this exciting protocol. So before we get into it, of course, this is opinion and entertainment show, so it's not investment advice. So seek a licensed professional if you want entertainment advice. And, without further ado, here's Brian. Hey.
Hey, Miko. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what we like to kick off with is sort of the news of the day or news of the hour. So it seems to me like one of the things that's happening that's interesting is, of course, that today is the day of the Biden inauguration. You know, we try not to get political on the show, but one of the things that does it causes new figures to appear in the administration. Obviously, some familiar and some less familiar faces. Gary Gensler coming in to head up the SEC. That's exciting for crypto people, obviously. And Janet Yellen handling Treasury, which is interesting, you know. And I think Janet Yellen, her words at her confirmation were related to now is the time for bold action. So I think she's very much in a stimulative mood. So, you know, the Biden administration is proposing a $1.9 trillion stimulus. And that should be really interesting from a macroeconomic effect. So I guess, what's your thought about this, in a sort of apolitical, but more like focused on Bitcoin and cryptographic assets?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. The macro climate and the U.S. political setup, of course, affects that considerably. A lot of people, especially business owners, see Biden as not a very positive thing for a number of reasons. Yeah. But if you're in crypto, actually most of the signals that we're seeing are pretty positive and bullish. Whether it's increased stimulus tends to provide additional liquidity, which flows back into crypto assets like Bitcoin. That's good for the overall space. As you mentioned, these new people are much more pro crypto from a regulatory regime perspective. And what we've already seen from like where the banking licenses with Kraken have been kind of moving forward, and with digital currencies of central banks on the horizon, I just think everything is kind of like a good tailwind to carry crypto further. So I'm pretty positive about the whole situation from a macro perspective right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I think one of the interesting things in banking is the OCC gave a federal license, not a Wyoming license, to Anchorage, which is quite a novel. And, Anchorage, of course, very well connected. Andreessen Horowitz startup company for, custody. So it should be an exciting year. So there's definitely some real interesting regulatory wrinkles coming, and obviously this kind of macroeconomic economic stimulus. So I think those are all potentially bullish. One of the really interesting bogeys on the horizon is sort of the ETH futures on the CME, right? So that's a really interesting one, because obviously the advent of Bitcoin futures on CME was kind of related to a downturn, right? And it's because it allows people to do a sort of shorting action. And in fact, at the Pantera meeting, actually, Commissioner Giancarlo from CFTC actually said that that was his master plan. So he said, well, you could give me credit for that. I suppressed the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah. He will take credit for that through and through, and he's done so for years.
Yeah. Audience wasn't super happy with him saying that, but that was it. But he's a real high flyer. Like he was basically saying, well, I'm going to go from the Pantera meeting to the Vatican, where I'm going to hang out with the Pope. So it kind of feels like he's got a real interesting lifestyle.
He might be on a different level than you and I.
Yeah, exactly. I liked it. It was he was a really neat keynote speaker at the event. But so talk a little bit about sort of the main event, right? Which is of course Kava. So one of the things I love to have founders do is talk about the problem. Like how do you define the problem that you're solving?
Yeah. So the big problem in DeFi is, well, currently DeFi is limited to the Ethereum ecosystem of assets. And what comes along with that is the types of collateral that can be used in DeFi is very limited. And then what we've seen recently is things like transaction bandwidth and the resources of the Ethereum network are starting to get really constrained because of the success of DeFi. I mean, CryptoKitties was the first kind of bellwether that said, things could be clogging up here. But DeFi taking off, and then actually USDT transactions and just regular payments of ERC20s has really filled up the whole blockchain, and that's what's causing $80 transaction fees and huge spikes that make what's supposed to be an open financial network and composable financial services no longer open to the world, but only open to what I would call like the ultra rich or people who can afford to pay $80 per transaction. That's way higher than what people currently pay to trade a stock or do anything in the US, much less if a person's in Vietnam, Malaysia, somewhere where the average person doesn't earn all that much money. So the overall promise of DeFi is make these financial services not just for the ultra wealthy, but accessible anywhere in the world to anyone, regardless of what asset they hold. And we really focus on addressing that particular problem.
Great. So I understand from your website and white paper that you're kind of a Cosmos Tendermint consensus type of blockchain. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, we constructed the blockchain using the Cosmos SDK,
yep.
which is not, it doesn't mean, a lot of people confuse this, but it doesn't mean that we're built on Atom or the Cosmos Hub.
Sure.
That's its own independent blockchain.
Yep.
There's over 100 different blockchains that use this framework that developers can use. And it's kind of like the skeleton of a blockchain where it does all the basic kind of messaging, sure. Formations of blocks, validating those blocks and making sure it's operating like a properly trustless blockchain. And where a developer comes in is you add the things you want that blockchain to specialize in. So for us, we kind of pulled all the levers to the max on the things that were important to us, like safety, security, cross-chain infrastructure, and devoting all the bandwidth of our blockchain to that particular set of tasks. Whereas other blockchains might specialize in something else. We think that in this world with Polkadot and Cosmos and kind of this multi-chain world that's forming, each blockchain will naturally have to choose one thing that it does well. And for us, we're choosing to do DeFi very well and provide a home for DeFi applications and services to live, where if you build an application on Kava, you just naturally inherit cross-chain infrastructure to all these other blockchains. So anyone, anywhere in the crypto ecosystem can use whatever's built there.
So what does it mean for your cross-chain infrastructure to be connecting? Are you using like IBC, or what's your mechanism for bridging or connecting cross-chain?
So I like to describe bridges or kind of this activity of moving assets from one blockchain to another in a spectrum, and Kava does kind of the full gambit of the spectrum. But I'll just break it down really quick. On the most centralized side of things, you have mint and burn. So you have a single address that has the ability to mint an asset on demand and burn it. That's the most common form of like USDT or USDC. But a lot of people think of that as like a single blockchain centralized thing. But in reality, how they operate, they're actually multi-chain, where you have USDT on Tron, you have it on Algorand, you have it on Ethereum, and you have it on Omni. So for those types of asset issuers, it's very important to have this mint and burn capability. And Kava provides a module to do that. So anyone can be voted in with the privilege to do that. We don't allow kind of anybody to just sort of show up with a wallet and start minting tokens on our blockchain, because that would constrain resources. But the governance group itself can look at any proposal. So if USDT came to Kava and said, hey, we want to start doing this on Kava, the governance group would look at the proposal and give them an address with permission to do that. And then those assets could be used as collateral on all of our apps and services that live on Kava. So that's on the most centralized side.
Yep.
Then in the middle, you have what I would call a trusted relayer or deputy setup. And this is what we've done with a blockchain like Binance Chain, which is already a fairly centralized set of node operators there and control.
Yep.
So how that works is a user on Binance Chain will move an asset to an address that we can effectively call like an escrow. It's stuck in a hash time lock contract. And from that point, it gets sent to a deputy, which is actually a node run by one party or a handful of parties that approves transactions going from that blockchain to the destination blockchain, which is in this case Kava. And there it delivers the Kava pegged version of that token to the user in their Kava address that they specify.
Yep.
IBC is one step over from that, where you actually, instead of have this like fairly centralized group of relayers, you have a multitude of relayers. So many nodes that they run nodes on both networks. They look for a transaction to be broadcast on the first blockchain. They then collectively reach consensus that, yes, it's a valid transaction. We're going to broadcast it on our nodes on the destination blockchain. And that is something that has just reached production recently. So it's been a promise of Cosmos, and it's only reached production after, I would say, like 3, maybe 4 years of work. So it's very exciting. A lot of people didn't think it was actually ever going to come through because it's in many ways this trustless way to move assets from one blockchain to another is actually a very difficult accounting problem, given that different blockchains work, with different modes, different consensus. And with IBC, it provides a standardized way for all of this to happen. So that's a really exciting evolution that's happening actually right now as we speak, blockchains adopting it. With the Cosmos Hub, they've adopted it first. I know Akash Network is adopting it. I believe Terra is as well. With Kava, we already have hundreds of millions of dollars locked in our blockchain in collateral assets. So we're a little bit more hesitant just from a governance perspective to readily adopt this new technology, even though it's been formally verified and it seems like everything's working and in good order. We want to just kind of tread lightly. We'll let a few other blockchains adopt it, work with it before we put kind of all of our user funds at risk by opening up this new cross-chain corridor.
It's just a funny note that you mentioned both Akash and Terra, because the past 2 show recordings I did was with Greg Osuri from Akash and Doquan from Terra. So like you're in good company, and it's interesting. I guess it's a small world is probably the best way to put it. But
yeah, especially I mean Terra was one of the first big projects like Kava in the Cosmos ecosystem. So Do and I we know each other for quite some time. We were bullish on Tendermint before the world was bullish on Tendermint.
Everyone should be excited about Tendermint. It's impressive.
Yeah. And then Greg, he's just been doing awesome, phenomenal work. He's one of the best developers in the space, and what he's built with Overclock and Akash Network. I think it's actually one of the most interesting blockchains kind of outside of DeFi that's around. So I'm really excited to see what they do going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting, and it's nice community, so it's great to see. The next segment is about numbers. So, in terms of like traction numbers, usage numbers, would love to get into your numbers.
Sure. I'm actually going to pull up a page here.
Great. Happy to have you do it.
We have kava.io/stats.
Great.
That provides a lot of numbers. So
so you can even get numbers newer than the ones you're going to give us right now. But please pull it up and let us know where the numbers are at.
So far, Kava Labs, the company, we created this Kava blockchain. On the Kava blockchain lives 3 assets that are native to our applications. There's the Kava governance token. There's the hard protocol governance token. And then USDX, the stable coin that's minted using the Kava lending app. And together, those currently have a market cap of about 464 million. So that's kind of the native assets are at that kind of fully diluted value. And then in terms of cross-chain assets that move to Kava, I see right now we have about 26 million in Bitcoin. We have a little under 4 million in XRP, about 10 million in BUSD, and 31 million in BNB deposited. So yeah, I don't know what that totals, but I think it's about 100 million in total.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in actually assets supplied, it varies, of course, as people are using these applications and collateralizing a loan, repaying the loan. But right now, the balance sheet of at least Kava's lending app, we have about 75 million in assets supplied as collateral to that application, and 32 million of USDX stablecoin or debt issued off of it. So those are the numbers there. And then in terms of the hard protocol, which is our cross-chain money market, that can be found at hard.kava.io. We currently have 41 million in assets supplied to the hard protocol that people can borrow from.
Wow, that's those are great numbers, and it's very very inspiring. So, um, the next segment that we talk about is sort of the secret. This is a bit inspired a bit by sort of the idea that every great entrepreneur has some kind of secret weapon or unfair advantage or some kind of like so what's your secret?
Oh, boldness? I don't know. I
Great.
think that one of the things that, at least when I got into crypto, uh, actually, I'll take this one step back. Even when so my last company is called Fnatic, which is, one of the largest esports organizations in the world.
Oh, I didn't
And
know
when I
that.
joined that, you
That's
didn't know
quite.
that?
I did not know that. That's really exciting and amazing, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So Fnatic, it's currently a $175 million company, valued by fours. Maybe it varies based on how bullish people are on esports at the moment. But when I got into that, my secret there was I was just passionate about esports and gaming. I loved gaming growing up. I wanted to do gaming, and I was willing to sacrifice kind of any salary or compensation to do it. And somehow I was able to stumble upon an opportunity to found this amazing company, which at the time nobody got paid to do that stuff. It was only after Twitch became a live streaming platform and advertisers could come in, and then family office money came in, and then the whole industry kind of got bootstrapped up into a much higher tier than where it started. So I guess like my secret would be that I'm usually so passionate that I'm foolish, and that was definitely the case in the gaming world when I was there. And then now in crypto, if I look at the history of Kava, we formed the company out of pure passion, and me and my co-founder Scott, we paid people's salaries. We hired some engineers and researchers in 2017, 2018, just to really do as much research so we could learn as much as we could. But we ended up getting our pretty much up to our eyeballs in debt without any good prospects of revenue at the time.
Yeah.
So that was, in hindsight, it was good to participate in the space, but it was also very foolish for how we did it. But we just had so much passion for it that we knew that we had to make something that the market wanted, and we knew that we were building up the capabilities and the insights to do so.
That's so
And
amazing.
thankfully,
Yeah.
that's how Kava got formed. And then the only other secret I might add to that is I'm usually too bold and brash that if there's anybody that I want to talk to, especially as I'm in that like learning phase at whatever industry I'm in, I will just reach out and figure out a way to get in front of them and have some time. So it was, I think, within 2 weeks of deciding I want to be in crypto, I want to learn as much as I could about this emerging blockchain space. Within 2 weeks, I had found myself at the headquarters of Consensus, having a meeting with Joe Lubin. I was meeting with the founders of Ripple. I was meeting with kind of every large player at the time that knew something about the space.
Amazing.
So I was at least able to bootstrap my knowledge from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. And then it's about kind of all the really deep expertise after that. But it really comes down to just I'm brave, and I'm not afraid to say, hey, can I have your time? And often they reply with yes, and you're surprised.
That is fantastic. And it's such a funny linkage because, I kind of have to admit, like, I'm an occasional watcher of, League of Legends and
Oh, you are?
esports. Yeah. So, like, I'm pretty familiar with Fnatic, especially last season with, like, Bwipo Broxa kind of, and Bwipo is just a hilariously fun person to watch because he's such a, like, incredibly dynamic player and very expressive. So his face is very fun to watch. So it's a great really great franchise, and it's amazing that you're a big part of that. It's funny actually. Kevin from Forte was doing GenG, so he started a pretty big empire in the esports world as well. So it's funny to have these kind of cross-planetary interconnections of sorts.
Yeah, no, definitely. Kevin came into the space, I don't know, a year or so after I did. And yeah, like I said, the wave at that time of just investment, and then just what I would call just like the enterprising or franchising of these sports teams, which previous to 2 years prior, it was really just collections of 18-year-olds who like to play video games, and somehow they got a sponsorship from Nvidia for $1,000 or something, and they thought that was a business.
Yeah.
And then just overnight, it turned into very large companies, huge things, just like real sports teams with merchandise, media rights, and everything else.
Well, I mean, they have bigger viewership than like the NFL and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
It's kind of hard for it.
Look at the numbers. There might be something there now.
Yeah, it's a ridiculously big thing, and I think the thing that's been really impressive too is how the league is executed during COVID. So it's much harder. It's much harder for the NBA. It's much harder for the NFL. It's much harder for these kind of like physical sports players.
COVID was a great boon for esports and just gaming overall.
Yeah, and for the audiences, right? Because a lot of the audiences were really itchy to watch sports, and there weren't much in the way of live sports to watch, right? So it really just became like, well, let's watch this. Like it's competitive. You get to yell, and you get to figure out.
A lot of people don't know, but it's a very social thing. You think gaming is an isolated thing that you do at home with a computer, but there's so many just groups that you would hang out on a Zoom call like this, or with your friends. You're actually playing games since you're spending more time at home.
Yep.
People taking work breaks and doing a quick game with their friends. There's just way more time and attention devoted to that industry right now, and it's probably going to last because as you said, you're watching League of Legends now. The characters, and now you're going to follow them probably even in the post-COVID world a bit more than you did before.
Yeah, it has been an amazing transition, and I think the world has received a very big whack towards the digital, and I think obviously the war on cash, but like digital money, digital currency, digital assets, digital finance, decentralized finance, it's all kind of happening. So I guess the next section is probably very adjacent to this, which is the idea of kind of inspiration, right? So this can be professional, but it can also be personal, right? Which is like what's inspiring to you now? Like obviously you mentioned that you're inspired by this space, which is the cryptocurrency space, but I'd love to get from you, like, do you have any kind of New Year inspiration or any kind of like, books or anything that you're like turned on to right now?
Ooh. I mean, I'm a voracious consumer of information in all forms: podcasts, books, blogs,
any good
everything. Most recently, there's quite a few. I actually have a collection of Nassim Taleb's books behind me that I need to get through.
Yep.
But that's on my agenda for this year. He's been well recommended by too many people that I just can't ignore it any longer, and I need to consume them. I'm going to forget the name, but there's a negotiation book that came out, I think, in the past year or two that is a really, really good read. It's made by this group called the Black Swan Group, but they just have amazing negotiation tactics by an I believe it's either FBI or CIA negotiator who would negotiate hostage situations. And it's just a fascinating book to read, but then you can apply the same tactics to business deals and everything else. So super interesting.
Yeah, like hostage negotiation type stuff. So you can be like, sign my contract, or I'm gonna like blow up the whole building, that kind of stuff.
Well, normally it's when you're dealing with someone who is the kidnapper. That's when you need to deploy these tactics, when someone's being unreasonable.
I see. You're kind of talking them off the ledge. You're like, okay.
Yeah, but it's like fascinating case studies of how this person's grandma gets kidnapped in Haiti, and then they want $1 million, but then through negotiations they negotiate it down to something like $1,600 in a Sony Walkman, and then the kidnappers accept the offer. It's just like really crazy things.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll follow up by email and get that reference, and I'll leave it in the show notes because it sounds too juicy to pass up. So it's really intriguing and fun and interesting, and has a lot of vitality. So I think we already did a couple of these, but the next segment is really about shout outs. So I know we did some shout outs for Akash, and we did one for Terra, but other kind of shout outs. I mean, you obviously did one for Joe Lubin and for the Ripple guys, but like who else is in your short list?
Yeah, I mean, so just going back on the book, since I just Googled it, it's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a fantastic book.
Cool.
I highly recommend. Never Split the Difference.
And it could come in handy if you're ever in a hostage negotiation or something.
Yeah, right. Life skills, real life skills.
Exactly, exactly. That's good. That's
So
good.
in terms of shout outs, like who am I paying attention to? Who I like? Well, as I mentioned, Greg from
Yep.
Overclock is, I think he's doing fantastic. But
Yep.
actually, the whole team over
Fantastic.
there with Boz and their team, they're just really great guys. They're new on the scene in terms of building a decentralized blockchain and kind of getting liquidity in the markets.
Yep.
But they're making all the right moves and they're doing it very smart. So I really appreciate that about them. In addition, I would say a shout out to David Johnston,
Oh,
which
wow.
you may know, but
Yeah.
he's a resident over here in my new hometown, and I've connected with him recently. But he's just a fantastic guy that I'm sure I'm going to see a lot
You're in
more of.
Texas.
Yeah, in
Nice.
Texas, and he's the master coin guy, the guy who coined DApps, and really OG Bitcoiner.
That's
So
so cool. That's amazing. Very, very good name. Fantastic. Well, that's always a great thing to get. The next segment I kind of jokingly call leaking alpha, which is it's more like a roadmap segment, right? Which is
okay.
what are kind of upcoming exciting events, for Kava, or even ones that you're just tracking in the industry. What are the product milestones and things that you're excited about coming up soon?
Yeah, so at the end of February, we have Kava 5, which is our fifth upgrade to the Kava blockchain. And that includes the hard protocol cross-chain money markets, the borrow function of that. So with that complete, people will be able to do kind of the circular activities that we see with Maker and Compound, where people use ETH, they mint DAI, and then they lend DAI on Compound, or they use that as collateral to do kind of rehypothecated supplying of DAI to get superior yields. We'll see that similar activity on Kava following that Kava 5 launch. And then later in the year, we actually have two new applications in the roadmap to be launched. One is a Uniswap native to the Kava blockchain, or automated market maker,
Yep.
because we have a lot of native assets on the blockchain, all these cross-chain assets like BTC and XRP. We'll be able to create liquidity pools for them. And then following that, the next application, which I believe is scheduled for Q3, end of Q3, Q4 this year, is a robo-advisor. You can think of it very similar as like a Yearn Finance for the Ethereum ecosystem, but again, native for Kava, that will allow people to use kind of the lending app, the money markets, the liquidity pools, and find the best strategies to generate yield all from them.
So yeah,
And then
go
what
ahead.
we're doing, since all this is like, we say apps, but really what they are services. We're packaging them all up into a single API that you can think of as, in a few lines of code, a crypto app developer can integrate and give, whether they're a wallet, an exchange, some investment app, they can give their users access to this, all with a very seamless integration. And that's because what we believe the future, especially for 2021, is holding, is that the world of centralized finance, or exchanges and wallets where all the retail customers live, they don't actually, based on data that we've seen from Kraken and others, they're not participating in DeFi today. It's too
Sure.
complicated to custody your own keys, to do diligence on
For sure.
various applications. You just don't know if you're going to get the rug pulled out from under you. So what we're prioritizing in kind of everything that we build is making sure that they can be directly integrated into centralized exchanges. And this API is a step towards that. We've already kind of done these preliminary proof of concepts with Binance and with BitMax, where they've directly integrated the hard money markets or the Kava lending app to give their users a one-click experience within the exchange to generate a return. But I think this API will allow us to expand, these integrations far faster and much easier for teams that are, even less technical than those guys.
That's impressive. And what's the sort of programming model that is endemic to the Kava ecosystem?
You mean like what language do we use?
Yeah, and just generally the environment and tool chain.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we're built on the Cosmos SDK.
Yeah.
Modules are added to provide discrete functionality, whether it's creation of a CDP or price feeds for oracles or whatever it might be. Each one of those modules is a package made in GoLang. And then we do most of our front end in JS.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's fairly standard, but the
Yeah,
GoLang
yeah,
stuff is.
nothing too complicated. I think there will be many other implementations in the future. I know a lot of people like things in Rust, and GoLang is actually a really nice one when it comes to DeFi, because you can be quite certain of, an input results in a certain output, and you don't need to worry, at least in the Cosmos SDK framework, of all these different packages of code really interacting with each other and complicating things by opening attack vectors. It's a very different environment to build DeFi applications than, say, something like Ethereum, where it's just an open smart contracting platform, where all of a sudden you get flash loan attacking, like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, those are things that we've remedied in how we've designed Kava, but there is still a need to make all of these applications and services composable, but in a safe and well thought through way.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And so, in terms of like the we, like obviously there's a, decentralization and community and whatnot, but like, like how would you characterize the we, like the Kava community? Like how do you, is there a core dev? Like what's the scoop?
Yeah. So from our perspective, like at least at Kava Labs, we do only software development, and we don't really run nodes on the Kava network. So when I think of the Kava network or the blockchain and how it's run, the we there, while we might contribute to the code base, the we is our very large list of validator orgs, many of which I'm very happy to have as our validators. All the leading exchanges, Binance, Huobi, OKX, they're validators on our blockchain, contributing to both the security and the governance. But then we also have interesting players, I would call them, that many other blockchains don't, where you want the validators and the node operators to be very credible entities. So we've worked with groups like Deltec Bank, where they have this Delchain subsidiary. They run a node on the Kava network, which then they can actually provide staking services to their customers or people who custody assets with them. And that's actually just really good from a reputation standpoint for our network. And then we have a really long tail of node operators as well that are what I would call more like hobbyists, where people want to participate. They want to run a node, like they might run a Bitcoin node, they'll run a Kava node. We'll have a lot of people like that supporting the network. And then we have our third-party integrations, and that's where BitMEX, Binance, those integrations come in. Our wallet options. So Cosmos Station provides a great Kava wallet. Trust Wallet provides a great Kava wallet where there's like native staking of Kava. Cosmos Station even allows cross-chain functionality between Binance Chain and Kava natively in their wallet. So all the partners like that are really important to us. But there's hundreds. And then the final users, we have about, I haven't looked at the stats actually in months, but as of 3 months ago, we had around 250,000 accounts on the blockchain since we launched.
Impressive.
And we've only been live for about a year now. And there are, at least the last time I looked, about 2,000 open active CDPs. So there's a whole base of people who hold the tokens and do something on the network with them. And that doesn't even include the trader base, which is, if the native accounts are, in the 200K to 300K range, maybe it's more now. I imagine our trader base is in the millions, just because there's way more people who are, leaving custody up to the exchanges.
Sure, absolutely makes a ton of sense. Well, that's really exciting. So, I know in various sections of the show we've already talked about some of these exciting other projects that you like, but this section that I do now is called Pocket Picks, and so if there's any kind of obviously Akash is an unsung hero, but like if there are other kind of really neat projects that you're keeping your eye on, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, internally, we do keep our eye on Frontier. It is an integration into Kava. It provides a front end to DeFi. The founder, Ravindra, was the ex-CTO of Instadap. He spun off and has made Frontier since.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But it's an overlay to a bunch of DeFi applications, including Kava. So we look at them quite a bit. I know that they've recently issued the Front token, which has been listed on Binance and Huobi and OKX. So they're doing a good job of facilitating liquidity of that. I'm really interested to see how they grow over time. And then what I do look at, but I'm not going to call out any favorites just now, is I do look at the Cosmos ecosystem and at players who are doing a lot of development. And I'll call out one, but THOR chain is really interesting, just from the amount of code that they've been pushing, the amount of activity that they've been able to facilitate, and they're a pretty decentralized team. So it's just really cool to follow them, follow folks over at Terra, like you mentioned, and all the progress they're doing. Completely two different ends of the spectrum, but when you look at the code that people are pushing and what they're building, there's a lot of activity happening. It's really interesting to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hassan from Arca gave a good shout out to THOR, and it's a very interesting project. Obviously, it's very dynamic, and tons of code getting thrown out. So it's pretty exciting to watch. Really interested to get your opinion, kind of in the broad spectrum, since you're in the kind of like Cosmos developer ecosystem. What's your take on the whole Polkadot system? Because obviously that's now sort of managed to flip in XRP as sort of a number 4.
Yeah,
so
it's number 4 now.
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy. So what I would say is, from a developer standpoint, unless you're a Rust maximalist, Polkadot's not the best place to develop. But there are different trade-offs, right? Like if you're a good developer and you can pick up Solidity, you can pick up GoLang, you can pick up Rust, and you're very flexible in that way. Different platforms offer different things. And what the Cosmos framework allows you to do is it allows you to make a blockchain that is of your own. It's your own security model. But what that means is you have to then go recruit a very good, robust, decentralized group of validators that are going to secure your chain. Otherwise, you might as well just run a blockchain with a node of 1, which is you guys. But that's not decentralized at all. So that's kind of the burden you inherit with the Cosmos SDK. But development in GoLang is actually, at least in our view at Kava Labs, a very superior developer experience to anything else. And the tools that are available for the Cosmos SDK are superior to kind of building stuff today. And we're very pragmatic. We chose it, actually, Cosmos at the time, mostly because it was the only ready framework that we could use to build our own blockchain. There wasn't much else available. I would say on the substrate side and with Polkadot, the tech seems good. Developer experience not so great, but you don't have that burden of getting a bunch of validators to have security. And it really depends on, as a group, organization building something. Do you want to have that burden? Do you need to have your own security model? If you don't, you should do a smart contract on Ethereum, or maybe you should do something on Polkadot. But if you do need your own security model, you need, which we did, we're holding a lot of collateral, and we need to make sure that our system is designed specifically for maximizing the security and reliability of DeFi applications. It was just a necessity for us to do that. And if you fall into that group, I think Cosmos is the best situation for developers like that.
Yeah, and I guess from a Pix perspective, like, what's your take on the Atom? Obviously, it's a separate entity unto itself, but what's your thought about it? I mean, my very vague thought on it is that if you look at it from a utility perspective, it certainly has potential to close some of the gap between it and DOT.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to what services can it offer. And right now, it doesn't offer, really much anything outside of the Atom governance token. But in their roadmap, there is quite a bit there that they're adding. And I know that they're going to be forking or reusing code developed by other SDK chains and looping some of that in. So I know that they've been exploring an automated market maker. They're probably looking at peg zones. So maybe Ethereum peg zone gets woven into it. There's a lot of activity that could happen with Atom, but I'm, again, a pragmatic person. So I will probably hold out to call a long or short on Atom until I see like real development and like a proper launch date for those things.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And you've got a lot of those kinds of tools on your own ecosystem. So it's a nice base layer. One that I'm kind of keeping track of that I'm excited about actually is Agoric. I don't know if you keep track of those guys, but
yeah. So Agoric is a very I have a bunch of people that were close to me. Even one of our original people at Ripple that we worked with has moved over to Agoric. They've been doing well. They're just really smart folks, and they've
Vanessa?
been yeah. So Vanessa moved over there.
Yep.
But I mean, the whole team is very smart, and they've been contributing a lot to the ecosystem. I know that they're not public with all the things that they work on, but it seems like they have a lot of nice things that are going to come out in the next year.
Yeah, just full disclosure, my fund is invested in Agoric, but we do like those guys, and it's, to me, like, I think it's a very kind of a nerdy gang, and that's the kind of thing I really like. I really appreciate it. So I think it's terrific, and they're doing some exciting stuff. I guess my mindset around something like that is that they really are developing a mechanism that enables JavaScript to be used in the way that, as a smart contract language, and that means adding kind of a security framework that is sort of above and beyond just vanilla, which is, the only real practical way to do it. So anyhow, they've been thinking about it for a long time. So I really like them. So I guess, on a closing note, I think you kind of touched on this throughout the show is, kind of what's the big idea? So, in terms of big ideas, like I like to reference Steve Jobs. I feel like his big idea was personal computing, and when he started out, computing wasn't very personal, and when he got done, it got really, really personal. So like I'd say he got that right. So do you have like this multi-decade longitudinal big idea thing going on, or what's your big idea?
Oh. Okay, yeah, there's so many ways you could answer that one. I'll try to scope it a bit more to what we're doing, and I like to keep things in a 2 to 3 year time horizon.
Yeah.
But as I kind of hinted at earlier, I think the biggest thing that we should all pay attention to is that crypto today is a very insulated group of crypto traders and technical enthusiasts. And the majority of that group doesn't even custody their own keys, and they don't interact with DeFi protocols today. And if you believe in this composable, decentralized financial services and applications world, which we do, we think that really the future of growth for all of this, outside of the central bank digital currencies, is direct integrations to retail environments, where the retail users don't need to think about it. They don't need to know what application or blockchain they're interacting with. They just need to know what return they're getting on what assets. And many, many more people are holding Bitcoin these days through Coinbase, through soon banks offering those as products to their customers. And what follows the PayPal adoption and Square and everything else, is giving people the ability to earn on those digital assets. In the form of interest, in the form of lending it like you would have a savings account at a bank or whatever it might be. So what I think the big idea is what are these distribution points that opens up digital currencies to a much larger base? And for us, for in the DeFi world, it's all about kind of those distribution points. Who are the big players who are going to open up the doors and lead the way, like PayPal seems to be doing, and taking the first steps to, that will really bring in the world to adopting this technology.
And we have, that is a very, very big idea. And I think it's very important to understand kind of scope and scale and magnitude, right? Like, I think if you go back in your time machine, I think you talked a lot about kind of how it happened for esports, right? And when you look at esports, it absolutely is like, oh, well, here's an 18-year-old kid, and he likes to play a game, and NVIDIA's giving him $1,000. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, this is bigger than the Super Bowl, It's like, oh, okay, that's a big freaking deal, right? And so, like, the question becomes like, I think it is important, because in the crypto world, this particular world is kind of insular bubble, and I don't think we really even understand the bigger world, right? So I think you're right. I think PayPal, Square, Cash App, you got Revolut. I've got kind of normie friends telling me about crypto Robinhood. So like it's
of course.
yeah. So right there, these are happening. And obviously there's kind of like native crypto CeFi adjacencies like BlockFi and Celsius and these kind of things, and those are kind of yield generating consumer friendly CeFi applications. So I think that those are big ideas. And I liked your answer of like these 2 to 3 year journeys, because that seems like a exciting way to live multiple lives.
Yeah, one parting tip I've learned recently that I'll give you, and you probably have come across this. You and I have both been avid frequenters of crypto conferences and events up until COVID has come around and really shut down the show.
Yeah.
But what that I've realized has limited has put on like the horse blinders on me, is I'm only talking mostly to my fellow crypto people who are really savvy, and it's shaped the way I viewed the industry for some time. But then when I started participating on platforms like Clubhouse, where it's sort of a live format where you're interacting, you'll have folks like you and me, Chris Dixon, whoever else, in a chat room as experts talking about a particular thing. But then at the same time, you get that conference experience where someone has just shown up because they're super excited, they're super curious, they just bought their first $100 of Bitcoin, and they have so many questions. And you start really realizing when you're in an environment like that, where you have the full range of people, just how early we still are. And I think it's really important to have that perspective, that the crypto community is very small still. And while there are a lot of big financial players getting involved, and that's changing the dynamic, the real big transformative wave happens when all those newbies really get brought up in the curve and more newbies come in. And it seems like that's going to happen over the next few years.
That's a wonderful insight, and I definitely encourage people to come check out Clubhouse. I've been in there for a little while. My friend Ahalia invited me, but I feel like this thing is really that we're in this adolescent phase between Bitcoins and Satoshis, right? Where Satoshis are too small. And like Bitcoins have suddenly gotten to be a little too large, for the kind of average person, right? The average person's not like, oh, give me 100 Bitcoins. It's like, no, that's not how they're thinking, right? So, it feels like we're in a adolescence. It feels like we need like a Nakamoto, or we need some unit that sits right in the middle, right? That people can really wrap their head around, or a stock split or whatever.
Definitely.
Just by MicroStrategy.
So many times I'm just like, Satoshis are still too small, but people need to start thinking in some in-between chunk, because there's so many people who just come in and like, I have to buy one whole Bitcoin, and someone goes, no, you don't. But that's always the question.
Isn't it amazing? That's an amazing thing. That's probably the most frequently asked newbie question, which is like, and they're always shocked. They're always like, oh, you mean I can buy less than one entire Bitcoin? Yeah. Like, it's like, oh, yes, that's true. Anyhow, fantastic. Well, this has really been incredibly refreshing. There's been so many like amazing little twists and turns, so I really enjoyed myself, and it was great hanging out.
Yeah, same here, Miko. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Thank you.